The crystal chandeliers above cast fractured light across the marble floors of Bellissimo, each prism throwing shadows that danced like whispers of wealth I'd never touch. My feet ached in the cheap flats I'd worn for 12 hours straight, the kind that left blisters but didn't show beneath my black uniform. The air smelled of truffle oil and old money, that particular scent of privilege that clung to velvet curtains and silk tablecloths like expensive perfume. I'd been refilling water glasses and clearing plates since the lunch shift, my fingers pruned from constant washing, my smile plastered on like the makeup I'd applied in the staff bathroom to hide the exhaustion. "Table 7 needs attention," Marco hissed as he passed, his tray loaded with champagne flutes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Table 7. The Ashford family. I'd been warned about them by the other servers. Old money, real estate empire, the kind of people who treated waitstaff like furniture that occasionally moved. I approached their private alcove, my notepad pressed against my apron, trying to make myself small and invisible the way this job demanded. The son sat sprawled in his chair like he owned not just the table but the entire building, maybe the whole city. He couldn't have been more than 25, dressed in a suit that probably cost what I made in 6 months, his brown hair artfully tousled in that way that screamed expensive salon. His parents flanked him, the mother dripping in diamonds that caught the light with every dismissive wave of her hand, the father's watch so heavy with gold it seemed to weigh down his wrist. Finally, the son, Preston, I'd heard his mother call him, drawled as I reached the table. "We've been waiting ages." "What kind of establishment is this?" "You've been here 8 minutes, I thought, but smiled instead. "I apologize for any wait, sir. What can I get for you this evening?" "The 82 Chateau Margaux," he said, not looking at me, his eyes on his phone. "And make sure it's properly decanted. Last time some imbecile served it wrong." "Of course, sir." I wrote it down, my hand steady despite the way my stomach knotted. That wine cost $3,000 a bottle. I'd checked the menu during training, had stared at prices that seemed like typos, like someone had added an extra zero by mistake. The restaurant hummed around us, low conversations, the clink of silverware on china, soft jazz from hidden speakers. I could feel eyes on me as I walked to the wine cellar, that sixth sense you develop when you're always being watched, always being judged. The bottle felt impossibly heavy in my hands, the label aged and precious. I decanted it carefully, the way Salvatore had taught me, watching the dark liquid catch the light as it poured. When I returned to table 7, Preston was laughing at something on his phone, showing it to his parents who chuckled with the kind of casual cruelty that comes from never facing consequences. I set the decanter down carefully, poured a small amount into Preston's glass for tasting. He didn't even look at it. "Just pour." I filled his glass, then moved to his mother's. My hands were steady. I'd done this 1,000 times, but as I reached across to fill the father's glass, Preston shifted, his elbow jutting out deliberately. I saw it in my peripheral vision, that calculated movement. And my arm caught, the decanter tilting. "Oh my God, you clumsy!" Preston shot up, wine splashing across the pristine tablecloth, a few drops hitting his sleeve. Not much, barely anything. But the way he reacted, you'd think I'd dumped the entire bottle on him. "I'm so sorry, sir," I started, my heart hammering, already reaching for the cloth napkin. "Sorry?" His voice rose, sharp enough to cut through the jazz music, through the comfortable murmur of wealth. Other tables turned to look. "Do you know how much this suit costs? Do you have any idea?" "Preston, darling, calm down," his mother said, but she was smiling, that thin-lipped smile of someone enjoying a show. "I'll get this cleaned immediately," I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be, my hands trembling now as I tried to blot the tablecloth. "I'm so sorry, it was an accident." "An accident?" Preston grabbed his wine glass, the one I'd just poured still full, and before I could process what was happening, before I could move or breathe or think, he threw it directly at me. The wine hit me like a slap, cold and shocking, soaking through my uniform, my hair, dripping down my face and neck. The glass shattered on the floor beside me. The entire restaurant went silent. I stood there, frozen, dark red liquid dripping from my chin, staining everything, ruining everything. I could feel every eye in the room on me. Could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. Preston's mother laughed first, a high tinkling sound like breaking glass. Then his father joined in, deep and booming. "Well," the father said, wiping his eyes, "I suppose that's what happens when you hire incompetent help. Maybe she'll be more careful next time," Preston added, sitting back down, adjusting his barely stained sleeve. "If there is a next time, I'd fire her immediately if this were my establishment." I couldn't move, couldn't speak. Wine dripped onto the marble floor, each drop echoing in the terrible silence. My face burned with humiliation, with rage I couldn't express, with the horrible helplessness of knowing I needed this job, needed the money, needed to swallow every ounce of dignity and just take it. My voice came out broken, barely a whisper. "I'll clean this up." "Don't bother," Preston said. "Just get out of my sight. You're dripping on my shoes." I bent to pick up the broken glass, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grasp the pieces. Other servers had frozen in place, watching. Marco's face was pale, his eyes apologetic but distant. No one would help me. No one could. The main doors of the restaurant opened. I didn't look up, too focused on gathering the shattered crystal, on trying to make myself disappear. But I felt it. A change in the air, a sudden tension that rippled through the room like electricity before a storm. The conversations didn't just quiet. They stopped entirely. Even the jazz seemed to fade. Footsteps on marble. Slow, measured, deliberate. Expensive shoes. I could tell from the sound alone, that particular click of Italian leather that costs more than cars. The footsteps stopped. At table 7. I looked up despite myself, and the world tilted. He was tall. That was my first thought. The kind of height that made you feel small without trying. But it wasn't just his stature, it was everything. The way he stood, perfectly still, but somehow coiled with potential energy. The black suit that fit him like it had been grown on his body, not made. The way shadows seemed to gather around him despite all the crystal light. His face was hard angles and aristocratic features, probably handsome by conventional standards. But there was something in his dark eyes that made handsome seem irrelevant. They were cold, assessing, the kind of eyes that saw everything and missed nothing. 2 men flanked him, both built like walls, their hands clasped in front of them, their eyes constantly scanning the room. Bodyguards. The real kind, not the rent-a-cops you saw at clubs. Mr. Constantine. The maitre d' appeared from nowhere, his voice obsequious, almost trembling. "We didn't expect you this evening. Your usual table is being prepared." The man, Constantine, didn't acknowledge him. His eyes were fixed on me, kneeling in wine and broken glass. Then shifted to Preston, who'd gone very pale, then to Preston's parents, who'd stopped laughing. Dimitri. His voice was quiet, barely above a conversational tone, but it carried through the entire restaurant like a judge's gavel. He had an accent, faint but unmistakable. Russian, maybe, or Eastern European. "Find out who these people are." One of the bodyguards pulled out a phone, his fingers moving quickly. "Now wait just a moment." Preston's father started to stand, but something in Constantine's gaze made him sit back down. "The Ashfords," Dimitri said after a moment, his voice flat and professional. "Charles Ashford, CEO of Ashford Properties, wife Eleanor, son Preston." Constantine nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving them. Then he looked at me again, and I felt pinned by that gaze, like a butterfly on a collector's board. "Are you hurt?" The question caught me off guard. My voice came out hoarse. "No, I'm fine." "Stand up." It wasn't a request. I stood, wine dripping from my uniform, my hair, aware of how pathetic I must look, how small and broken, but he didn't look at me with pity or disgust. He looked at me like I was a problem to be solved, an equation that needed balancing. He turned back to the Ashfords. "You find this amusing? Look, I don't know who you think you are," Preston said, trying for bravado, but his voice wavered. "But this is a private matter between Victor." Constantine's voice cut through Preston's words like a knife through silk. The second bodyguard moved forward, pulled out what looked like an iPad, tapped it a few times, then showed it to Constantine. He read whatever was on the screen, his expression never changing, then nodded. "Charles Ashford," he said, still in that quiet, terrifying voice. "You have a contract with Volkov Enterprises. Waterfront Development Project, $650 million. The blood drained from Charles Ashford's face. Yes, but... Cancelled. The word dropped into the silence like a stone into still water. "You can't..." Charles stood up now, his face red. "We have a signed agreement. You can't just..." "Read the termination clause," Constantine said. "Conduct incompatible with company values. This," he gestured to me, standing there soaked in wine, "is incompatible with my values." Eleanor Ashford's diamonds trembled as her hands shook. "Please, Mr. Constantine, I'm sure we can discuss this. Preston didn't mean..." "Your son," Constantine said, each word precise and cold as surgical steel, "assaulted this young woman, in public, for his entertainment. And you laughed." He paused, letting that sink in. "I do not conduct business with people who lack basic humanity." Preston looked like he might be sick. "It was just a joke. She's just a..." "Finish that sentence," Constantine said softly, "and I will ensure you never work in this city again. Not in real estate. Not anywhere." "You can't threaten my son," Charles blustered. But there was fear in his eyes now. Real fear. "I do not make threats, Mr. Ashford. I make promises." Constantine pulled out his phone, tapped it once, held it to his ear. "The Ashford contract. Terminate it. Effective immediately." "Yes. I'm aware of the penalties on our end. Pay them." He hung up, slipped the phone back into his pocket. "Your lawyers will receive the paperwork within the hour." The silence was absolute. I could hear my own heartbeat. Could feel wine still dripping from my hair, cold against my skin. Constantine turned to me, and his expression shifted, not softening exactly, but something changed in his eyes. "What is your name?" "Emma," I whispered. "Emma Ross." "Emma Ross," he repeated, like he was memorizing it. "You will come with me." "I what?" My voice cracked. "You need new clothes, medical attention for any injuries, and..." He glanced at the maitre d', who looked ready to faint. "I assume you no longer wish to work here?" I looked around. Marco wouldn't meet my eyes. The other servers had turned away. My manager was nowhere to be seen. I was already fired. I could feel it. This job was gone. "No," I said finally. "I don't. Then come." He gestured toward the door. "I can't just... I have to clock out, get my things. Dimitri will handle it." The bodyguard nodded, moved toward the back. "Everything will be collected and sent to you." "But I don't understand why." "Because no one," Constantine said, his voice quiet but iron hard, "should be treated the way you were treated tonight, and because I have very particular feelings about justice." He turned and walked toward the door. The crowd parted for him like water around a ship. I stood there, wine-soaked and shaking, aware that I was at a crossroads, that whatever choice I made in the next 5 seconds would change everything. The Ashfords sat frozen at their table, their world crumbling around them. I followed him. The night air hit me as we stepped outside, cold and sharp, making the wine on my skin feel like ice. A black Mercedes waited at the curb, its windows tinted so dark they looked like pools of oil. The door was already open. Constantine gestured for me to enter. I hesitated at the threshold, one foot on the street, one about to step into a car with a man I didn't know, who'd just destroyed a family's business deal over me, a stranger, a nobody. "I won't hurt you, Emma Ross," he said, reading my hesitation. "You have my word." And somehow, impossibly, I believed him. I got in. The door closed behind us with a sound like a bank vault ceiling, and as the car pulled away from Bellissimo, away from my ruined uniform and shattered life, I realized I couldn't see out the windows. They were too dark. Couldn't see where we were going or what I'd just agreed to. I'd just stepped into a cage, and I wasn't sure I wanted to escape. The interior of the Mercedes smelled like leather and something else. Cedar, maybe, or sandalwood, rich and dark and expensive. I sat pressed against the door, my wine-soaked uniform sticking to the seat, hyper-aware of every breath Constantine took beside me. He'd maintained that careful distance, not touching me, not crowding me, but his presence filled the entire space like smoke. Where are we going? My voice sounded small in the silence. Somewhere you can clean up. He was looking at his phone, his thumbs moving across the screen with practiced efficiency. Then we'll discuss your options. My options? I turned to look at him properly for the first time since entering the car. In the dim interior light, his features were even more striking. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, and those eyes. God, those eyes. They flicked up from his phone to meet mine, and I felt pinned again, examined. You need employment. I may have something suitable. He returned his attention to his phone. Victor, take us to the penthouse. Have Maria prepare the guest suite. Yes, sir. The driver's voice came through an intercom, distorted but deferential. Penthouse. Guest suite. The words filtered through my exhausted brain slowly. I can't. I should just go home. I appreciate what you did back there, but... You're covered in wine and glass fragments, Constantine said, his tone matter of fact. Your uniform is ruined. You've likely been terminated from your position. What exactly are you going home to? The bluntness of it stole my breath. He wasn't wrong. My apartment was a studio in the worst part of town, the kind of place where you heard gunshots at night and pretended they were fireworks. I shared a bathroom with 3 other units. The lock on my door was broken. Home was just a place to sleep between shifts, nothing more. I'll manage, I said, but even I could hear how hollow it sounded. I'm sure you will. He pocketed his phone, turned to face me fully. But you don't have to. Not tonight. There was something in the way he said it that made my chest tight. Not pity. I would have hated pity. More like recognition. Like he'd once stood where I was standing. Though looking at him now, all wealth and power and casual authority, that seemed impossible. Why are you doing this? I asked. You don't know me. You threw away a business deal worth hundreds of millions for what? His eyebrow lifted slightly. For a woman who was publicly humiliated and assaulted. For basic human decency. That deal was important. Money is never as important as principle. He said it with such certainty, such absolute conviction, that I almost believed him. Besides, the Ashfords were poor business partners, sloppy, careless. Tonight simply revealed their true character sooner than anticipated. The car glided through streets I didn't recognize, heading toward the part of the city where buildings scraped the sky and doormen wore better suits than I'd ever owned. I watched the lights blur past, my reflection ghostly in the tinted window. Bedraggled, wine-stained, pathetic. I don't understand you, I whispered. No, he agreed. But you will. The certainty in his voice sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building so exclusive it didn't have a sign, just a number in brushed steel, 1170. We entered through a private garage, the Mercedes pulling into a spot next to a collection of cars that belonged in museums. A vintage Ferrari, something sleek and Italian I couldn't name, a Bentley that looked like it had never seen rain. Constantine exited first, then offered his hand to help me out. I hesitated. My fingers were sticky with dried wine. But he waited patiently until I placed my palm in his. His grip was warm, strong, careful. He held my hand just long enough for me to stand, then released it. But I could still feel the ghost of his touch burning my skin. The private elevator required a key. Of course it did. Everything about this man screamed security, control, careful orchestration. We rode up in silence, my reflection multiplying in the mirrors that lined the walls. Dozens of Emmas, all wine-stained and lost, all watching Constantine's imposing figure with something between fear and fascination. The doors opened directly into the penthouse. I'd seen luxury before, serving it, cleaning around it, but never like this. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city, a carpet of light stretching to the horizon. The floors were dark hardwood, gleaming like still water. Modern art hung on white walls, pieces I vaguely recognized from my one college art history class before I'd dropped out to work full-time. A Rothko, maybe. Something that probably cost more than I'd earn in 10 lifetimes. Mr. Constantine, A woman appeared from a hallway, older, wearing a simple black dress, her gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. "The guest suite is ready. I've laid out some clothes that should fit." "Thank you, Maria." He turned to me. "This is Maria Petrov. She manages the household. Anything you need, ask her." Maria's eyes swept over me, taking in the wine-soaked disaster of my appearance, but her expression remained neutral, professional. "Come with me, dear. Let's get you cleaned up." I followed her through rooms that seemed to flow into each other like water. A kitchen that belonged in a magazine, a living room with furniture that looked too expensive to sit on, hallways lined with closed doors that hinted at mysteries I'd never uncover. She led me to a bedroom that was bigger than my entire apartment. "The bathroom is through there." Maria gestured to another door. "Take your time. There are towels, toiletries, everything you need. The clothes are on the bed. I'll have some tea sent up and something to eat. You look half-starved." "I'm fine," I said automatically, but my stomach chose that moment to growl, betraying me. I hadn't eaten since my break at noon. A stale sandwich from the staff room. Maria's expression softened slightly. "No one is fine after what you've been through tonight. Let yourself be taken care of just this once." She left before I could respond, closing the door with a soft click. I stood in the center of the room, dripping wine onto pristine floors, my hands trembling. The absurdity of the situation crashed over me like a wave. 12 hours ago, I'd been worried about making rent. Now I was standing in a penthouse that probably cost more per month than I'd earn in a year, invited here by a man who'd canceled a $650 million deal because someone had thrown wine on me. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. I walked to the bathroom on legs that felt disconnected from my body. Marble everywhere. Counters. Floors. A shower that could fit 6 people. A tub that looked carved from a single piece of stone. I caught sight of myself in the mirror and stopped. I looked destroyed. Wine matted my dark hair, stained my pale skin, turned my white shirt a mottled purple. There was a small cut on my cheek from the shattered glass, dried blood mixing with the wine. My eyes were too wide, too bright, skating on the edge of shock or hysteria or both. I turned on the shower, watching steam fill the room like fog, and began peeling off my ruined clothes. The water was exactly the right temperature, hot enough to hurt, to wash away not just the wine, but the memory of Preston's laugh, his parents' cruelty, my own helplessness. I stood under the spray until my skin turned pink, until I could breathe again without my chest feeling tight. The clothes Maria had left fit surprisingly well. Soft gray sweatpants, a cashmere sweater in cream that felt like wearing a cloud. There were undergarments too, still tagged, exactly my size. How had she known? I pushed the thought away. Rich people probably had ways of knowing everything. When I emerged, a tray waited on the bedside table. Tea in a delicate china cup, steam curling from it like a question mark. Sandwiches cut into triangles, fruit, chocolate. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing, my mind replaying the night on an endless loop. A knock at the door made me jump. "Come in," I called, expecting Maria. It was Constantine. He'd changed too, the suit replaced with dark slacks and a black sweater that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. His hair was slightly damp, like he'd showered too. He carried a tumbler of amber liquid. Something expensive and strong, probably. "May I?" He gestured to the chair by the window. I nodded, unable to speak, suddenly aware of how intimate this was. Me in borrowed clothes, him in his private space, the city lights throwing shadows across his face. He sat, took a sip of his drink, studied me with those unsettling eyes. "How are you feeling?" "Confused," I admitted. "Overwhelmed. Grateful, I think. I'm not sure." "Honesty. Good." He set the glass down on the side table with a soft clink. "I'll be honest with you too, Emma Ross. What happened tonight at Bellissimo was unacceptable. But it also presented an opportunity." "An opportunity?" My voice came out sharper than intended. "For what?" "I have a position that needs filling. Personal assistant. The work is demanding, the hours long, but the compensation is significant. Housing included. A secured apartment in this building, 3 floors down. Healthcare, benefits, everything you need." I stared at him. "You're offering me a job?" "Yes." "Why?" I shook my head. You don't know anything about me. I could be terrible at it. I could steal from you. You won't. He said it with such certainty that I felt it like a physical thing. I'm an excellent judge of character, Emma. I've built an empire on reading people, and you... He leaned forward slightly, his gaze intense. You're loyal, hard-working. You endured that humiliation tonight and didn't lash out, didn't make a scene, even though you had every right to. You tried to fix it. That's rare. Or maybe I'm just a coward, I said bitterly. No. His voice hardened. You're a survivor. There's a difference. The word survivor hung between us, heavy with meaning I couldn't quite grasp. I thought about my studio apartment, the broken lock, the constant fear, the 3 jobs I'd been juggling, the exhaustion that never ended, the slow, grinding poverty that wore you down until you forgot you'd ever wanted more than just to survive. What would I be assisting with? I asked carefully. Everything. Schedule management, correspondence, travel arrangements. I have business interests that require constant attention. You'd be my right hand. I don't have any experience with, you've been managing chaos for years, he interrupted. Working multiple jobs, supporting yourself in one of the most expensive cities in the world. You're resourceful. I'll train you in the rest. It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. What's the catch? I asked. There's always a catch. Something flickered in his eyes, approval, maybe, or amusement. The catch is that my world is complicated. Dangerous sometimes. You'd be required to sign extensive NDAs. Your loyalty would be tested constantly. And, he paused, choosing his words carefully, there are people who would hurt you simply because you're associated with me. What kind of business are you in? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know the answer. Import-export, primarily legitimate, though I operate in spaces where legitimacy is sometimes negotiable. He held my gaze. I won't lie to you, Emma. I'm not a good man by conventional standards, but I protect what's mine. And if you work for me, you'll be protected. Absolutely. Completely. No one will ever treat you the way you were treated tonight. Not ever again. The promise in his voice was dark and absolute, and it should have frightened me. Instead, I felt something else entirely. A dangerous, reckless hope. I need to think about it, I said, though we both knew I'd already decided. What choice did I have? Go back to my broken apartment, try to find another minimum wage job, keep surviving day to day? Or take a chance on this mysterious, terrifying man who'd upended his business dealings for a stranger? Of course. He stood, finished his drink. Stay here tonight. Tomorrow we'll discuss details, contracts, everything official. Maria will ensure you have everything you need. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the frame, looked back at me. For what it's worth, Emma Ross, I'm glad I was at Bellissimo tonight. Fate has strange timing. You don't believe in fate, I said, though I had no idea why I thought that. His smile was brief, barely there, but it transformed his face completely. No, but I believe in seizing opportunities, and you, that intense gaze again, pinning me, are an opportunity I intend to seize. He left, closing the door behind him, and I sat there in borrowed clothes in a guest room that cost more than my education, my heart racing for reasons I couldn't name. Outside, the city glittered like spilled diamonds. I'd stepped through the looking glass tonight, into a world I didn't understand, and the terrifying part was that I wanted to stay. I didn't sleep. How could I? The bed was too soft, the sheets too expensive, the silence too complete. I was used to sirens and shouting, the constant urban symphony of survival. Here, 47 floors above the chaos, the quiet pressed against my eardrums like water pressure. I lay awake watching shadows shift across the ceiling, replaying everything. Preston's cruelty, the wine soaking through my skin, Constantine's cold fury, and the way an entire room had held its breath at his presence. When dawn finally crept through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the city in shades of rose gold, I gave up on sleep entirely. I showered again, scrubbing away the last phantom traces of wine, and dressed in the clothes Maria had left. Dark jeans that fit perfectly, a soft white blouse, a blazer in charcoal gray, professional. someone else's life. I found my way to the kitchen following the smell of coffee. Maria was already there, moving through the space with practiced efficiency, preparing breakfast like conducting a silent orchestra. "Good morning, dear." She poured me a cup without asking, added cream the way I liked it, though I'd never told her. "Mr. Constantine is in his office. He asked that you join him after you've eaten." "I'm not really hungry," I started, but she was already sliding a plate across the marble island. Eggs, toast, fresh fruit arranged like art. "Eat," she said, gentle but firm. "You'll need your strength today." There was something in her tone that made me obey. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing, my stomach too knotted with anxiety to register food. When I finished, Maria gestured down a hallway I hadn't explored. "Third door on the left. He's expecting you." The hallway was lined with photographs in simple black frames, not family pictures, but places. Cities at night, industrial buildings, ports with shipping containers stacked like Lego blocks. His business, I realized. His empire rendered in black and white. I knocked on the third door. "Come in," came his voice, and I entered. The office was all dark wood and leather, bookshelves lining one wall, a massive desk dominating the space. Behind it, windows looked out over the city we ruled from this height. Constantine sat at the desk, papers spread before him, a laptop open, 2 phones within reach. He looked up as I entered, and something in his expression shifted, softened, maybe, though the word seemed wrong for someone so inherently hard. "Emma. Good morning." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Please, sit." I sat, my hands folded in my lap, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. "I've had my lawyers prepare employment contracts." He slid a thick folder across the desk. "Standard NDA, benefits package, salary structure. Take your time reviewing it. If you have questions or concerns, I'll have my counsel walk you through everything." I opened the folder, and the number on the first page made my breath catch. The annual salary. It was more than I'd made in the last 5 years combined. Healthcare, dental, vision. A housing stipend that was more than my current rent. 4 weeks paid vacation. I looked up at him, my voice unsteady. "This is too much. It's market rate for a personal assistant to someone of my position," he said calmly. "Actually, it's slightly below market rate. You'll earn every penny, I assure you." I kept reading. The NDA was extensive. I couldn't discuss his business dealings, his personal life, anything I learned while in his employment. Breach of contract resulted in penalties that made my head spin, but buried in the clauses, I found something else. A protection agreement. If I was harmed, threatened, or endangered because of my association with him, he would provide security, legal assistance, relocation if necessary. He would, in essence, become responsible for my safety. "Why are you really doing this?" I asked, setting the papers down. "And please, don't tell me it's just business." He leaned back in his chair, studying me with those dark, calculating eyes. For a long moment, he said nothing. And I wondered if I'd overstepped, if I'd just ruined the opportunity before it began. "My mother was a waitress," he said finally, his voice quiet. "In Moscow, before we came to America. She worked at a hotel restaurant. Brutal hours, terrible pay. One night, a drunk guest threw a drink in her face because his steak was overcooked. The manager fired her, not the guest. She came home crying, smelling of vodka and shame. And He paused, something dark crossing his face. I was 7 years old and completely powerless to protect her. The confession hung in the air between us, raw and unexpected. This man who commanded rooms with a glance, who canceled multi-million-dollar deals with a phone call, had once been a powerless child watching his mother suffer. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Don't be." His voice hardened again, the vulnerability shuddering behind steel. That night taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. Power is the only thing that matters, the only thing that protects. Everything else is illusion. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Last night, I saw my mother in you. Saw her humiliation, her helplessness. And I had the power to do something about it this time. So I did. I'm not your mother. I said carefully. No, but you deserved better. And I could provide it. He tapped the folder. This isn't charity, Emma. I need an assistant I can trust. Someone who understands what it means to fight for survival. Someone who won't take my power for granted because they've lived without it. You're perfect for the position. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe that this was all straightforward, all professional. But there was something in the way he looked at me. Something in the careful way he maintained distance even as he pulled me into his orbit that suggested nothing about the situation was simple. Okay, I heard myself say. I'll do it. Something flickered in his eyes, triumph, satisfaction. Something darker I couldn't name. Excellent. Maria has prepared your apartment. You can move in today. Dimitri will collect your things from your old residence. I should probably do that myself. No. The word was sharp, absolute. You'll never set foot in that neighborhood again. It's not safe. Dimitri and Victor will handle everything. The possessiveness in his voice should have alarmed me. Instead, I felt something warm unfurl in my chest, dangerous and addictive. Someone cared about my safety, someone thought I was worth protecting. We'll start immediately, he continued, all business now. Today you'll shadow me, learn my schedule, my preferences, my expectations. Tonight there's a charity gala you'll attend with me. A gala? I blinked. I don't have anything to wear to. Already handled. Maria will take you shopping this afternoon. Consider it part of your uniform. He stood, buttoned his suit jacket. Now, we have a meeting in 30 minutes. Notebook, pen. You'll take notes, observe, learn. I scrambled to my feet, following him out of the office, my head spinning. This was happening. This was actually happening. I was leaving behind everything I'd known. The struggle, the poverty, the constant fear, and stepping into something entirely new. I just wasn't sure if I was being rescued or captured. The meeting was held in a conference room 3 floors down, in an office suite that belonged to one of Constantine's many businesses. 6 men in expensive suits sat around a table, and I recognized the language of power immediately. Who deferred to whom? Who spoke first? Who controlled the conversation with silence? Constantine controlled all of it. I sat in the corner with my borrowed notebook, taking notes in shorthand I'd taught myself years ago, trying to understand the discussion. Import routes, shipping schedules, customs documentation. Legitimate business, as he'd said, though the way certain phrases were coded suggested layers beneath layers. The Port Authority is requesting additional documentation, one man said, sliding papers across the table. They're flagging the container shipment from Rotterdam. Handle it, Constantine said, barely glancing at the documents. Pay whatever fees are necessary. I want those containers cleared by Friday. Sir, the fees are substantial. If we push back, negotiate. I don't negotiate with bureaucrats. Pay them. Move on. The man nodded, chastened. No one questioned Constantine twice. I watched him work, fascinated despite myself. He was completely in control, never raising his voice, never showing emotion, but his authority was absolute. These men, powerful men, wealthy men, feared him, respected him, obeyed without question. The meeting ended after an hour. As the men filed out, one lingered. Younger than the others, maybe mid-30s, handsome in an obvious way, his smile too white, too practiced. Dimitri, who's the lovely assistant? He spoke to the bodyguard, but his eyes were on me, appraising, hungry. Emma Ross, Constantine said before Dimitri could respond, his voice cold enough to frost glass. My personal assistant, who is leaving, now. The dismissal was clear. The man's smile faltered, but he nodded, backing toward the door. Of course. Good to meet you, Emma. When he was gone, Constantine turned to me. You'll encounter men like Yuri frequently. Ignore them. He seemed harmless enough, I said. No one in my world is harmless. He picked up his phone, checked something, frowned. We need to make a stop before shopping. Business. You'll wait in the car. The car took us to the industrial district, where warehouses stretched like concrete giants against the gray sky. We pulled into a loading dock, and Constantine exited without explanation, disappearing into a building with Dmitri while Victor stayed with me in the Mercedes. I sat in the leather-scented silence, watching workers move crates with forklifts, wondering what business required this kind of secrecy, this kind of security. Gunshots shattered the quiet. My heart stopped. Victor was out of the car instantly, gun drawn. When had he been carrying a gun? Speaking rapidly into his phone in Russian. More gunshots. Shouting. The workers scattered like startled birds. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. This wasn't supposed to happen. This was supposed to be legitimate business. Safe. Normal. The door beside me opened, and Constantine slid in, completely calm. Not a hair out of place, though I could smell gunpowder on him like cologne. "Drive," he said to Victor. And we were moving before my brain could process what had happened. What? My voice came out strangled. What was that? A disagreement with the supplier. It's handled. He was checking his phone again, scrolling through messages like we hadn't just fled a gunfight. Handled? Someone was shooting. Emma. He looked at me then, and his eyes were flat, cold. The eyes of someone who'd seen violence and worse, who'd perhaps caused it. This is my world. I told you it was dangerous. If you can't handle, I can handle it, I said, surprising myself. My hands were shaking, adrenaline flooding my system, but underneath the fear was something else. Anger. But don't lie to me. Don't tell me it's all legitimate business when people are shooting at you. A slow smile crossed his face, dangerous and approving. Fair enough. Some of my business operates in gray areas. I won't lie to you again, Emma, but I won't apologize for it either. This is who I am, what I am. Which is what, exactly? I demanded. He considered me for a long moment, then leaned close enough that I could feel his breath against my ear, smell cedar and gunpowder and danger. I'm the monster that keeps other monsters in check, he whispered. I'm the wolf that hunts wolves. And now, he pulled back, his eyes locked on mine. You're under my protection, which means you're safe. Safer than you've ever been, because anyone who touches you answers to me. The promise in his voice was dark and absolute, and I felt it wrap around me like chains, like safety, like a cage I was choosing to enter. Okay, I whispered, and watched satisfaction bloom in his eyes. We drove to the luxury district in silence, and I stared out the window at the city I'd always lived in but never really seen. Not from this height, not with this protection, not with this terrifying, magnetic man beside me. Maria met us at an exclusive boutique, the kind without prices in the window, because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. Constantine disappeared to take a phone call while Maria guided me through racks of clothes that felt like silk water, held up dresses that probably cost more than my old car. For tonight's gala, she said, pulling out a gown in deep emerald green. Mr. Constantine prefers this color. Says it suits you. He's already decided what I should wear? I asked, trying for annoyed but landing somewhere near flattered. Maria's smile was knowing. He decides everything, dear. Best you learn that now. I tried on the dress. It fit like it had been made for me, the silk clinging to curves I'd forgotten I had, the color making my dark hair look almost black, my pale skin luminous. When I stepped out of the dressing room, Maria nodded approvingly. Perfect. He'll be pleased. Why did it matter if he was pleased? Why did the thought make my stomach flutter? I was collecting my things when I heard voices raised outside, Constantine's, low and dangerous, and someone else's, pleading. I moved to the window, saw a man on his knees on the sidewalk, Dmitri standing over him, Constantine watching with that cold, assessing expression. The man was crying, begging. Constantine said something I couldn't hear, and Dmitri pulled the man to his feet, dragged him away. Constantine turned, saw me watching through the window, and our eyes met through the glass. He didn't look ashamed, didn't look apologetic. He looked at me like he was daring me to run. I should have run. Instead, I held his gaze, lifted my chin, and stayed. His smile was slow, predatory, satisfied. I'd just passed a test I hadn't known I was taking. And the terrifying thing was, I felt proud. The gala was held at the Metropolitan Museum, the kind of event where champagne flowed like water and every woman wore jewels worth more than houses. I stood in my emerald dress in the penthouse, watching Maria fasten a diamond necklace around my throat. On loan, she'd said, from Constantine's collection, though the casual way she said collection suggested he owned enough jewelry to open his own store. "You look beautiful," Maria said, stepping back to admire her work. "He won't be able to take his eyes off you." "That's not the point," I said, but my reflection betrayed me. I did look beautiful. The dress transformed me into someone else entirely. Someone who belonged at galas, who wore diamonds like they were nothing, who didn't flinch at the price tags that made my old life seem like a distant memory. It had been 4 days since Bellissimo. 4 days in my new apartment, 3 floors down, but might as well have been another planet from my old studio. 4 days of shadowing Constantine through meetings and phone calls and the complex machinery of his empire. 4 days of learning that import-export meant controlling half the shipping routes on the East Coast, that gray areas meant connections to people whose names appeared in news articles about organized crime, that my new boss was either a legitimate businessman with questionable associates or something far more dangerous wearing a legitimate businessman's face. 4 days of his eyes following me across rooms, of his hand at the small of my back guiding me through doorways, of the way he said my name like it meant something. 4 days of lying to myself about what this was becoming. A knock at my apartment door. Constantine, punctual as always, dressed in a tuxedo that probably cost more than my college tuition had. His dark hair was swept back, his jaw sharp enough to cut, and when his eyes met mine, something flashed in them too quickly to name. "You look—" He stopped, seemed to recalibrate. Acceptable. Acceptable. The word stung more than it should have. I'd spent 3 hours getting ready, had let Maria work magic with makeup and hair, had poured myself into this dress that felt like wearing liquid emerald. Acceptable. But then I saw the way his jaw tightened, the way his hands flexed at his sides like he wanted to reach for me and was restraining himself, and I understood. This was control. This was him maintaining the distance that had defined our relationship. Professional, bounded, safe. "Thank you," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You clean up nicely yourself." His smile was brief, dangerous. "Shall we?" The Mercedes glided through evening traffic, Victor driving while Dimitri sat in the front passenger seat, both men alert, scanning. I'd learned their patterns over the past few days. The constant vigilance, the way they cleared rooms before Constantine entered, the guns they carried with practiced ease. My new normal included armed bodyguards and security sweeps. My old normal had included wondering if I could afford dinner. "Tonight's charity focuses on youth education programs," Constantine said, scrolling through his tablet. "I'm expected to make a substantial donation. You'll stay close. Observe how I interact with potential business partners. Many deals are made at events like this." "Deals?" I asked. "Legitimate ones?" He glanced at me, something like amusement in his eyes. "Mostly, though the line between legitimate and otherwise is often blurrier than people like to admit." "That's not reassuring. It's honest." He set the tablet aside. "You'll meet people tonight who'll want to know about you. Who you are, where you came from, why you work for me. Your story is that you're my executive assistant, highly recommended by a mutual contact, impeccable credentials, nothing more. So I lie. You protect yourself." His voice hardened. "And me. Discretion isn't just a job requirement, Emma. It's survival." The weight of the diamond necklace suddenly felt heavier, like a collar. Beautiful, expensive, binding. The museum was transformed, its grand entrance lit with spotlights that turned the stone facade into something ethereal. We joined a line of luxury cars depositing their passengers. Women in gowns that cost as much as cars. Men in tuxedos discussing stock portfolios and yacht clubs. Victor opened our door, and Constantine exited first, then offered his hand to help me out. The moment my heels touched the red carpet, cameras flashed. I froze, blinded, overwhelmed. But Constantine's hand found the small of my back, steady, grounding. "Smile," he murmured. "You're beautiful, and you belong here. Believe it." I smiled, and the cameras loved it. We walked past photographers shouting questions. past reporters with microphones, past the velvet ropes that separated people like us from people like I'd been just days ago. Constantine kept his hand on my back the entire time, possessive, protective, claiming me in a way that should have bothered me, but instead made me feel safe. Inside, the museum's great hall had been transformed into something from a dream. Ice sculptures caught the light like frozen diamonds. Champagne towers sparkled, a string quartet played something classical and melancholy, and everywhere were the wealthy and powerful, the names you read in Forbes and the Wall Street Journal, the people who shaped the world with their money and influence. "Constantine!" A woman approached, 50s maybe, wearing enough diamonds to buy a small country, her smile sharp as broken glass. "How wonderful to see you. And who is this lovely creature?" "Emma Ross, my executive assistant." His introduction was smooth, practiced. "Emma, this is Catherine Blackwell, CEO of Blackwell Industries." "Charmed," Catherine said, her eyes cataloging every detail of my appearance, measuring my worth. "Executive assistant. How modern. I remember when men of your stature preferred more traditional arrangements, Constantine." The implication hung in the air like poison. I felt heat rise to my cheeks, felt anger spike sharp and hot, but Constantine's hand on my back pressed slightly. A silent message. Control. Composure. "Ms. Ross is exceptionally qualified," he said, his voice pleasant but with an edge of steel beneath. "Her organizational skills are unmatched. I'm fortunate to have found her. I'm sure you are." Catherine's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Well, enjoy your evening." She swept away, and I released a breath I hadn't known I was holding. That was typical. Constantine finished. "People will make assumptions. Ignore them. You know the truth of our arrangement. Did I? Did I really? Because standing here with his hand on my back, wearing his diamonds, playing his assistant while he defended my honor to women who thought I was something else entirely. What was the truth of our arrangement? The evening progressed in a blur of introductions and careful conversations. Constantine was masterful, charming when necessary, intimidating when useful, always in control. I stood beside him, smiling, taking mental notes, learning the subtle dance of power and influence. And slowly, I began to understand. This wasn't just a charity gala, this was a chess game, and every conversation was a move, every smile a strategy. Konstantin Volkov, a man's voice, cold and sharp, cut through the pleasant murmur. "I heard you were in attendance." I turned to see a man approaching, late 40s, silver hair, expensive tuxedo. But there was something predatory in his eyes, something that made every survival instinct I'd ever developed scream danger. Constantine's entire demeanor shifted. The pleasant facade dropped, replaced by something harder, colder. His hand on my back became a cage, keeping me close, keeping me safe. "Marcus." The name was spoken like a curse. "I'm surprised they let you in. Last I heard, your membership was under review." Temporary misunderstanding. Marcus's smile was all teeth, no warmth. Unlike some people's business practices, which seem permanently questionable. The air between them crackled with tension. Around us, conversations quieted. People were watching, sensing blood in the water. "Careful, Marcus." Constantine's voice dropped, became something dark and dangerous. "You're in public. You have witnesses. I suggest you remember that before you say something you'll regret." Is that a threat? It's a reminder that some of us still value discretion. Marcus's eyes slid to me, and I felt stripped bare under that gaze. Examined, assessed, catalogued. Pretty new assistant. Very pretty. "Tell me, Constantine, does she know what kind of man she's working for? Does she know about the shipments that disappear? The money that flows through accounts in the Caymans? The bodies that..." Constantine moved so fast I barely registered it. One moment he was beside me, the next he had Marcus by the throat, slammed against a marble column. His face inches from Marcus's, his voice a whisper that somehow carried through the sudden silence. "If you ever speak about my assistant again," he said, each word precise and deadly, "if you ever look at her again, if you even think about her, I will end you. Not your business, not your reputation, you." Do we understand each other? Marcus's face had gone purple, his hands clawing at Constantine's wrist. Security was moving toward us, but Dmitri intercepted them, said something that made them stop. Wait, watch. Do we understand each other? Constantine repeated. Marcus managed a jerky nod, and Constantine released him, stepped back, smoothed his tuxedo like nothing had happened. Marcus collapsed against the column, gasping, and Constantine turned to me, his expression shifting back to that careful control. We're leaving, he said, taking my arm, but the donation can be handled remotely. He guided me through the crowd, which parted like water, everyone staring, whispering. Dmitri, the car, now. We left through a side entrance, away from cameras, away from witnesses. The cool night air hit me like a slap, and I gulped it down, my hands shaking. I'm sorry, Constantine said once we were in the Mercedes, speeding away from the museum. You shouldn't have seen that. I lost control. Who was he? I demanded. What was he talking about? Constantine was silent for a long moment, staring out the window at the city lights blurring past. When he finally spoke, his voice was tired, older than it should have been. Marcus Hendricks. We have history, competing business interests. He believes I stole contracts that rightfully belong to him. He's not entirely wrong. And the things he said about bodies, and some of it is true. He turned to face me, and in the dim light of the car, he looked dangerous and vulnerable at once. Some of it is speculation. All of it is complicated. I've told you, Emma. My world exists in gray areas. I'm not a good man. I've done things that would horrify you, but everything I do for a reason. To protect what's mine. To build something that lasts. By threatening people? By violence? When necessary. He didn't look away, didn't flinch from my judgment. I won't apologize for protecting you. Marcus was testing boundaries, seeing if you were a weakness he could exploit. I showed him you're not. By making me look like I need protecting, like I'm some helpless... You're not helpless, he interrupted, his voice sharp. But you're in my world now, surrounded by people who would hurt you just to hurt me. That makes you vulnerable whether you like it or not. And He stopped himself, jaw tight. I won't let anyone harm you, not for any reason. The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, I felt that dangerous warmth unfurling again, that addictive sense of being wanted, protected, valued. This is insane, I whispered. I've been working for you for 4 days and you're starting fights at charity galas over me. Yes. He said it simply, like it was obvious, like it was inevitable. Does that bother you? It should have. God, it should have. But sitting there in the dark car with this dangerous, complicated man who'd upended his entire evening to defend me, I couldn't find it in myself to lie. No, I admitted, it doesn't. His eyes darkened, and the space between us felt charged, electric. He leaned closer, and I could smell cedar and expensive cologne and something underneath that was just him, just Constantine, dangerous and magnetic and impossible to resist. Emma, he said, my name a warning and a question at once. Yes? My voice came out breathless. His hand came up, fingers brushing my cheek, the touch so gentle it made my chest ache. You should be afraid of me. I know. You should run. I know. But you won't. It wasn't a question. No, I whispered. I won't. The car pulled into the building's private garage, and the moment shattered. Constantine pulled back, his expression shuddering, control reasserting itself. But I'd seen behind the mask, had glimpsed something raw and wanting, and I knew with absolute certainty that whatever this was between us, it was far more than employer and employee. It was obsession. It was possession. It was dangerous. And I was walking into it with my eyes wide open. He walked me to my apartment door, a gentleman's gesture that felt absurd after everything. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow we have meetings all day, then dinner with potential investors. It will be challenging. More challenging than tonight? I asked, trying for light, but landing somewhere near shaky. His smile was brief, barely there. Tonight was just the beginning, Emma. You're in my world now, and my world is never easy." He turned to leave, and I caught his arm without thinking. He froze, looked down at my hand on his sleeve, then up at my face. "Thank you," I said, "for defending me." I couldn't finish, couldn't articulate the complex tangle of gratitude and fear and want that churned inside me. "Always," he said, and the single word was a vow, a promise, a threat. He left, and I locked my door. The good lock, the expensive one that came with this apartment, with this new life, and leaned against it, my heart racing. I'd been rescued from poverty, from humiliation, from the grinding survival that had defined my existence, but I was beginning to understand that rescue and capture could look remarkably similar. And the terrifying truth was that I didn't care. 3 weeks passed like a fever dream. I learned Constantine's world from the inside. The legitimate businesses that funded everything, the shell corporations that hid transactions, the network of contacts that stretched from City Hall to the docks. I learned which calls to put through immediately and which to deflect. I learned that Tuesday mornings meant meetings with his accountants, that he took his coffee black with 1 sugar, that he hated inefficiency more than he hated betrayal, because betrayal at least showed initiative. I learned that the man who'd threatened Marcus Hendricks at a charity gala could be tender, careful, unexpectedly kind. He'd had my old apartment cleaned out, my few belongings moved and stored, then donated everything to charity because you deserve better than reminders of that life. He'd opened accounts in my name, insisted on a security detail when I protested I didn't need one, had Maria check on me daily like I was something precious that might break. I learned that I was falling for him, and that terrified me more than the guns or the gray area business dealings, or the men who came to meetings with blood on their knuckles. It was a Thursday afternoon when everything changed. I was in Constantine's office, organizing files, when Dmitri entered without knocking. Unusual enough that I looked up immediately. His face was grim, his jaw tight. "Sir, we have a problem." Constantine didn't look up from his laptop. "Handle it." "It's about the Rotterdam shipment, the one Marcus mentioned." Now Constantine looked up, his eyes sharp. "My office. Private. Emma, wait outside." I gathered my things, but as I moved toward the door, Constantine's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or concern. "I need to take this," he answered. Spoke in rapid Russian, his voice clipped and cold. Then he paused, listening, and his entire demeanor changed. The color drained from his face. His hand tightened on the phone until his knuckles went white. "When?" he asked in English, his voice barely above a whisper. Another pause. "How bad?" He hung up, stared at the phone for a long moment, then looked at Dmitri. "Get Victor. Get the car. Now. Sir. Now." Dmitri left at a run. I stood frozen, watching Constantine gather his jacket, his keys, his gun. He strapped it on without seeming to think about it. Muscle memory and necessity. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Someone I knew. An old friend. She's been in an accident." He was moving toward the door, and I could see it in every line of his body. Fear. Real fear, the kind that cut through all his careful control. "I need to go." "I'm coming with you." "No. You'll stay here where it's safe." "Constantine." He stopped, turned, and the look on his face silenced me. Raw. Desperate. Haunted. "Please, Emma." "Not now. I can't. I need you safe. I need to know you're safe." It was the please that did it. This man who commanded with absolute authority, who never asked for anything, was begging me to stay, so I nodded. And he left. And I stood in his office surrounded by the machinery of his empire, feeling helpless and useless, and more afraid than I'd been since that night at Bellissimo. He didn't come back that night, or the next day. Maria assured me he was fine, that he'd checked in, that he'd texted instructions for meetings to be rescheduled, but I could see the worry in her eyes, could feel it in the tension that settled over the penthouse like fog. On the second day, I couldn't take it anymore. I found Dmitri in the security office, monitoring cameras, coordinating with the team. "Where is he?" I demanded. "At the hospital, St. Catherine's, the woman from the accident. Take me to him." "Miss Ross, Mr. Constantine specifically said, "I don't care what he said." My voice came out harder than intended, sharp with fear disguised as anger. "Either you take me, or I'll go myself. Your choice." Dmitri studied me for a long moment, then sighed. "He's going to kill me for this. Wait here." 20 minutes later, I was in the Mercedes, Victor driving, Dmitri beside him. All of us silent as we cut through traffic toward the hospital. St. Catherine's was in the medical district. All glass and steel and hushed efficiency. Dmitri led me through corridors that smelled of antiseptic and despair, past waiting rooms full of worried families, to a private wing where security was tighter, where you needed clearance just to enter. We found him in a private waiting room, slumped in a chair with his head in his hands, still wearing the same clothes from 2 days ago. His shirt wrinkled, his hair disheveled. He looked destroyed, broken. Nothing like the controlled, powerful man I'd come to know. "Constantine," I said softly. His head snapped up, and the look he gave me was equal parts relief and fury. "I told you to stay. I know what you told me." I crossed to him, knelt in front of his chair so we were eye level. "But you've been gone for 2 days. You look like hell, and My voice cracked. "I was worried about you." Something in his face softened. His hand came up, cupped my cheek, thumb brushing my skin with heartbreaking tenderness. "You shouldn't be here. It's not safe. Where you are is where I need to be." He closed his eyes, leaned his forehead against mine, and I felt him tremble. This man, this powerful, dangerous man, was shaking. "She's dying, Emma. Irina. She was important to me. And there's nothing I can do. All my money, all my power, and I can't save her. I'm sorry," I whispered, my hands finding his, holding tight. "She has a daughter, 4 years old. Anya, no father. He was garbage, left before she was born. Irina has no family, no support system. When she dies, Anya goes into the system, foster care. And he pulled back, looked at me with eyes full of anguish and determination. "I can't let that happen. I won't." "What are you saying?" "I'm going to take custody, adopt her if necessary, give her the life Irina wanted for her, give her everything." The declaration hung between us, massive and world-changing. Constantine, intense, controlled, dangerous Constantine, was going to become a father to a 4-year-old girl. The absurdity of it, the sweetness of it, the sheer improbable rightness of it, made my chest ache. I couldn't find words. "That's incredible. She's lucky to have you." "No." His voice was firm. "I'm lucky if she accepts me, if I can be what she needs. I don't know how to be gentle, Emma. I don't know how to be soft. Everything I touch, I break or control or destroy. How do I raise a child? The same way you do everything else," I said, with absolute commitment and terrifying competence. The ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You have more faith in me than I deserve." "No. I have exactly the right amount." A doctor appeared in the doorway, and Constantine stood immediately, his hand still holding mine like an anchor. "Mr. Volkov, Ms. Petrov is asking for you." We followed the doctor down another corridor to a room where machines beeped softly, where a woman lay in a bed surrounded by tubes and monitors. She was young, maybe 30, with dark hair and pale skin, her breathing labored, her eyes closed. In the chair beside her bed sat a little girl with the same dark hair, clutching a stuffed rabbit, her eyes red from crying. "Anya," Constantine said softly, and the girl looked up. "Remember me? Uncle Kostya?" She nodded, and he knelt beside her chair, suddenly gentle, his entire demeanor shifting to accommodate this small, frightened child. "Your mama is very sick, but I'm going to take care of you, okay? You're going to come live with me, and we'll have adventures, and you'll never be alone. I promise. Will Mama be there?" Anya's voice was tiny, hopeful, breaking. Constantine's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed gentle. "Your Mama loves you very much. She'll always be with you, in your heart. But yes, she'll be there for a little while longer." "Do you want to hold her hand?" Anya nodded, and Constantine helped her stand, guided her small hand to her mother's. The woman, Irina, stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Kostya," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You came." Always. He moved to the other side of the bed, took her free hand. I'll take care of her, Ira. I swear it. She'll want for nothing. Not things. Irina's breath rattled. Love. Give her love. Be gentle with her. Be the man I know you can be. I don't know how. You do. Her eyes found mine, standing in the doorway, watching. Who is she? Emma, Constantine said. She works for me. He paused, and I saw him struggle with the definition, with the inadequacy of words to describe what we'd become. She's important. Irina smiled, weak but genuine. Good. Anya needs a mother figure. Needs softness. You too. You'll be good for her. The assumption hung in the air, massive and presumptive and somehow exactly right. We'd never discussed relationship status, had never crossed that professional line. But here was this dying woman handing us a child and assuming we'd become a family. And the terrifying thing was, I wanted it. Wanted this impossible, complicated, dangerous man. And the child who'd just lost everything. Rest now, Constantine said, his voice rough. We're here. We're not leaving. Irina's eyes closed and her breathing evened out. Anya climbed back into her chair, clutching her rabbit, and Constantine pulled up another chair beside her. Protective. Watchful. I stood in the doorway, feeling like an intruder on this intimate moment, but unable to leave. Constantine looked up, saw me hesitating, and held out his hand. Come here. I crossed to him, and he pulled me down into his lap, wrapped his arms around me like I was the only solid thing in a dissolving world. We sat like that for hours, Constantine holding me, Anya holding her mother's hand. All of us waiting for the inevitable. Irina died just before dawn. The funeral was small, private, held at a cemetery where old trees provided shade and privacy. Constantine had arranged everything. The casket, the flowers, the priest who spoke of resurrection and peace. Anya stood between us, holding both our hands, her small face solemn but dry-eyed, like she'd used up all her tears in the hospital. After the burial, after the few mourners had left, Constantine knelt beside Anya and spoke to her with heartbreaking gentleness. Your mama loved you very much, he said. More than anything in the world, and she asked me to take care of you. Would that be okay? If you came to live with me and Emma? Anya looked at me, her dark eyes assessing. Will you read me stories? The question was so unexpected, so purely childlike in the midst of all this grief, that I almost laughed. Yes, I said, kneeling beside Constantine. Every night if you want. And will Uncle Kostya keep the bad dreams away? Constantine's expression softened. Always. No nightmares will ever touch you. I promise. Okay, Anya said simply, and returned to examining her stuffed rabbit. Her world shifted, but her child's resilience already beginning to rebuild. We drove back to the penthouse in silence. Maria had prepared one of the guest rooms for Anya. Soft pink walls, stuffed animals, everything a little girl might need. Anya explored it with cautious wonder, touching things carefully like they might disappear. She'll need time, I said to Constantine as we stood in the doorway watching her, to grieve, to adjust. This is going to be hard. I know. His hand found mine, held tight. But we'll manage it. Together. Together. The word implied so much: partnership, commitment, a future that included both a traumatized 4-year-old and whatever this thing was between us. Constantine, I started, but he turned to me, his expression intense. I need to tell you something. The night at Bellissimo, it wasn't chance that I was there. I'd been tracking the Ashfords for weeks, knew they'd be at that restaurant. I was there specifically to confront Charles about the contract terms he'd been trying to renegotiate. I stared at him, my mind racing. So when Preston threw that wine, I saw an opportunity to end a bad business relationship and to... He paused. To save someone who needed saving. You reminded me of my mother, yes, but you were also yourself. Strong and vulnerable, and fighting so hard to maintain dignity in an impossible situation. I wanted to give you a chance at something better. So this was all calculated? A strategy? At first. His hand tightened on mine. But then you got in my car. Then you stayed despite the danger. Then you stood beside me through meetings and galas and every complicated, dangerous piece of my world. And it stopped being strategy and started being... He struggled for words. Started being everything. My heart hammered against my ribs. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm in love with you, Emma Ross. The words came out rough, unpracticed, like he'd never said them before, and wasn't sure of the pronunciation. I'm saying that what started as opportunity has become obsession. You're the first thing I think about when I wake up and the last thing before I sleep. You're in my head constantly, in my chest, in my... He pressed his hand to his heart, everywhere. And I know I have no right to feel this way. Know I'm dangerous and damaged and that you deserve someone better, someone softer. But I'm also selfish enough to want you anyway, to want you completely, to want... I kissed him, pulled him down by his collar and kissed him with all the fear and want and need that had been building for weeks. He froze for half a heartbeat, then responded with an intensity that stole my breath, his hands coming up to frame my face, his kiss desperate and claiming and somehow reverent all at once. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. Is that a yes? That's a yes, I whispered. To all of it. The danger, the complications, the instant fatherhood. To you. Just all of it. Yes. His smile was brilliant, transforming. The first genuine joy I'd seen on his face since the hospital. You're sure? Because once you're mine, Emma, I don't let go. I don't share. I'm sure. I cut him off with another kiss, softer this time, sweeter. I've been sure since you destroyed a business deal for a stranger covered in wine. Best business decision I ever made, he murmured against my lips. Emma? A small voice from inside the room made us break apart. Anya stood there, clutching her rabbit, her eyes uncertain. Will you read me that story now? I looked at Constantine, at this man who'd somehow become my entire world in the span of weeks. And he nodded. We entered Anya's room together, and I picked a book from the shelf, something about a princess and a dragon, and settled on the bed with Anya curled against my side. Constantine sat in the chair beside us, his presence a steady warmth, a promise of protection. I read until Anya's eyes grew heavy, until she fell asleep with her rabbit tucked under her chin, her small hand holding mine. Constantine carefully lifted her, tucked her in, and we stood together watching her sleep. We're really doing this, I whispered. Becoming a family. Yes. His arm came around my waist, pulled me close. Is that terrifying? Absolutely. I leaned into him, felt his heart beating steady against my back. But also right. Somehow. We stood there in the soft glow of the nightlight, watching a child sleep, two broken people somehow piecing together something whole from our shattered parts. 6 months later, the adoption was finalized. Anya Volkov, officially, legally, permanently. She'd stopped having nightmares around month 3, had started calling me Mama Emma around month 4, had begun to laugh and play and be the child she deserved to be. Constantine was surprisingly good with her, patient, gentle, reading bedtime stories with the same intense focus he applied to business deals. He'd even learned to braid her hair, though he claimed it was harder than negotiating international contracts. We got married on a Tuesday afternoon at City Hall, just the 3 of us and Maria as witness, because Constantine had decided he was tired of referring to me as his assistant when I was so much more. The ring he slid onto my finger cost enough to buy a house, but the look in his eyes when he said, "I do," was worth infinitely more. Life wasn't perfect. Constantine still had business dealings that kept me awake at night, still operated in those gray areas that made me uncomfortable. But he'd become more careful, more strategic, less willing to take risks now that he had a family to protect. The violence had decreased. The legitimate businesses had expanded. He was, slowly, becoming the man Irina had believed he could be. And me? I'd gone from invisible waitress to the wife of one of the city's most powerful men, to the mother of a brilliant, funny, resilient little girl. I'd learned that rescue and capture could be the same thing, that cages could be chosen, that sometimes the dangerous choice was the right choice. On a Sunday morning, I woke to find Anya curled between Constantine and me, her dark hair spread across the pillows, her rabbit tucked under her arm. Constantine was already awake, watching both of us with an expression of such fierce love and protectiveness that it made my chest ache. "Good morning," I whispered. "The best morning," he corrected, his hand finding mine across Anya's sleeping form. "Every morning with you is the best morning." That's very sentimental for a ruthless businessman. His smile was slow, dangerous, warm. "You've made me soft, Emma Volkov." "Not too soft, I hope. Never that." He leaned across Anya, kissed me gently. "Just soft enough. Just enough to be the man you and Anya deserve." Anya stirred, opened her eyes, saw both of us watching her, and smiled. "Pancakes?" she asked hopefully. "Pancakes," Constantine agreed, and we got up. This improbable family, this dangerous, complicated, perfect unit we'd built from tragedy and wine-stained uniforms and a chance meeting in a restaurant. Later, as I watched Constantine flip pancakes while Anya sat on the counter, helping, I thought about that night at Bellissimo, about Preston's cruelty and my humiliation, and the moment Constantine had walked through those doors and changed everything. I'd thought I was being rescued. Instead, I'd been claimed. Captured by a man who turned his possessiveness into protection, his obsession into devotion, his dangerous world into a fortress around the family he'd chosen. And the woman who'd once served wine and cleaned tables and lived in survival mode, she'd learned that sometimes the cage you choose is the only place you've ever been truly free. I crossed to Constantine, wrapped my arms around him from behind, felt him lean back into my embrace. Anya laughed at something, and the sound filled the penthouse like music. "I love you," I whispered against his back. "Always," he said, the word carrying the weight of every promise he'd ever made and kept. "Forever, Emma. You're mine, and I'm yours, and this," he gestured to encompass everything, the kitchen and Anya, and the life we'd built. "This is everything I never knew I needed." "Same," I said, and meant it. Outside, the city stretched beneath us, glittering and dangerous and full of possibility. But inside, in this fortress of glass and steel and fierce protection, we were safe. We were home. We were impossibly, perfectly, completely whole.